Shabbat Shalom to everyone. It's again delightful to be with you on this Shabbat evening. And it's an honor to always speak with you, and I'm honored that the congregation entrusts me with leading this pulpit and supporting me as I share my words of Torah with the community. It's sad when you look up to a person and you find out that they are flawed. I'm sure many of you have had that experience in your lives, and it's painful. Here is my personal example and dilemma. I've always been so admiring of Pope John Paul II as a spiritual hero. He was an extraordinary religious leader, brilliant, charismatic, saved Jewish children in the Holocaust, stood firm against communist oppression, and most importantly, was a visionary who affirmed in the most powerful way the importance of the Jewish people. On April 13th, 1986, Pope John Paul II made a historic visit to Rome's monumental main synagogue facing the Tiber River, a spiritual center of what is believed to be the oldest Jewish community in the West. He said many amazing things that day, and his very presence in and of itself made a statement. He deplored the hatred and persecution of the Jews throughout the centuries. He affirmed that God's covenant with the Jews is irrevocable. And here are the words that reverberate in my soul. The Jewish religion is not extrinsic to us, but in a certain way intrinsic to our own religion. With Judaism, therefore, we have a relationship which we do not have with any other religion. You are our dearly beloved brothers, and in a certain way, it could be said that you are our elder brothers. He was an incredible friend of the Jews, and indeed, he was made a saint. But here's the problem. It turns out that he was also quite flawed. He rejected reports that ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick slept with his seminarians. Pope Francis defrocked McCarrick at the age of 90 last year after separate Vatican inquests determined he sexually abused children and adults, including during confession. The 449-page report determined that John Paul II had received credible reports about McCarrick's misconduct from authoritative prelates in the late 1990s. Yet even after commissioning an inquiry that recommended against the promotion, John Paul II in the year 2000 named McCarrick Archbishop of Washington, D.C., and later a cardinal. How is this possible? How is it possible? Pope John Paul II was such a great man. And yet in this area, he was so flawed. And his inactions, perhaps, his concern about the institution of the church rather than the victims is inexcusable. I should know better. It is dangerous to idealize someone. Our fantasy of a person never meets reality. The greatest of people are flawed. Let me give you two examples that we are familiar with. FDR. He saved Western civilization. His leadership was essential for destroying the Nazis, saving what? The West. Yet he could have done a lot more for the Jews. Challenging immigration quotas, permitting the St. Louis to dock in the United States and allowing the Jews to get off, diverting resources of the war effort to bomb the railroad tracks to the concentration camps and the gas chambers. Those are flaws that we Jews just have to face. And there are others. President Truman. He was instrumental in the creation of the State of Israel. But here's a letter that Truman wrote to his wife, Bess, and I quote, "Uncle Will does hate Chinese and Japs," Truman continued. So do I. It is a race prejudice, I guess, but I am strongly of the opinion Negroes ought to be in Africa, yellow men in Asia, white men in Europe and America. I'm not indicting these men, just telling the truth about them. But I need to follow the lead of our wise tradition. Judaism has no problem with dealing with highly imperfect people. Jewish tradition says that within us, there is this struggle between the good instincts, the bad instincts, the Yetzer HaTov, the Yetzer HaRa. It never gets resolved. It's always this struggle. We need to utilize constructively, tradition says, both inclinations and work to make the better part of ourselves win out against the less positive parts of our being. That's what we discover in the Torah reading this week. The patriarchs are honored in our tradition. We look, the Amida, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. When we talk to God, we talk through the patriarchs and matriarchs. But every one of the patriarchs and matriarchs are flawed, and the tradition is open about them. Look at our portion. Jacob is about to meet up with his brother Esau after 20 years. The last time they met, Esau wanted to kill him. We are told that as a young man, Jacob takes advantage of Esau's physical exhaustion and faintness in order to steal his birthright. And sometime later, we read how Jacob grossly dupes his father Isaac into giving him Esau's blessing. And therefore, Rebecca is a co-conspirator. What a nice bunch they are. And then the night before Jacob's reunion with Esau, there is this mysterious encounter, and Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. And at the end, Jacob receives a new name, Israel. Who did he wrestle with that night? This is not a story about a wrestling match with a person or with an angel. It's about an inner struggle, an inner wrestling. He could not meet his brother Esau without wrestling with the guilt that he felt about stealing both his birthright and blessing. The battle was within himself, his struggle to become a better, more honest, fair, and just human being, confronting with remorse his past. The words of Ecclesiastes are worth remembering. There is no righteous man on earth whose deeds are good and who does not sin. I will repeat Ecclesiastes. There is no righteous man on earth whose deeds are good and who does not sin. Perfection is an illusion. It's really a delusion. We should be quite cautious in pointing the finger at another person. We don't measure up so well ourselves. Years ago, Jane and I were in Florence, Italy, during Thanksgiving. We went to see the statue of David carved by Michelangelo at the Accademia in Florence. David was pretty near perfect. I've never seen anything as perfectly sculpted as that. First, Michelangelo sculpted David out of a flawed piece of marble that another artist had cast away. People don't know that. If Michelangelo could make David out of a flawed piece of marble, imagine what we can do out of the flawed material of our own lives. And second, we also saw 2 rows of Michelangelo's sculptures opposite him. Some call them the prisoners, as they look like forms of people emerging from rock. They were incomplete, imperfect, unfinished beauty coming out of a block of stone. These figures are trying to transform themselves into something better. So what am I going to do with my fallen hero, Pope John Paul II? I'm going to do 2 things. First, I'm going to accept him for who he always was, an incredible man. who did wonderful things, but was flawed. He was unfinished, and his flaw caused suffering because he could have stopped innocent people from being molested. But that is not the totality of his being. And I will not allow that act of irresponsible blindness, as serious as it is, to diminish his greatness as a religious leader. Second, I'm going to challenge us all to learn from this. We certainly need to confront our own flaws. Thank goodness, most often they are only part of our story. There is more to us than our worst moments or decisions. Let's forget about perfection. We are all carrying too much baggage to ever achieve that. Our goal must be to strive to be the best version of ourselves. That is all that we can expect from ourselves and from others. And I think this will be more than enough. Shabbat Shalom.